Well, good day and welcome to another chapter of Marin Fire History. Today we're going to do a subject that I really enjoyed, and it's called we're doing a piece on the Van Pelt fire apparatus. As we know, Van Pelt was a major fire apparatus builder here in Marin County for several decades. And joining me today is retired Santa Fe Fire Chief Bob Marcucci. And I've got to give a shout out to him because he came up with this idea about, hey, maybe we can do a piece on P.E. Van Pelt and how he got into the business. So, good morning, Chief.
Good morning, Paul. Thank you.
You bet. Maybe you can give us an outline on, who Van Pelt was and how we got into building fire apparatus for practically everyone in Marin County.
Well, Percy Edward Van Pelt was discharged from the Navy in 1918, and he moved from Stockton to Oakdale, where he had an orchard. He then went to work for a Ford agency as a salesperson, and the following year he started his own agency doing Dodge, and he bought the central garage in Oakdale. In 1923, the fire chief of Oakdale asked him to build a fire engine for him. It was a small one, I assume, for vegetation fires. And Van Pelt did it. Soon after, many of the people in the surrounding communities asked him to build fire engines for them. And so, being the entrepreneur that he was, he put up a building solely for the construction of fire engines. And by 1935, he was known throughout the Western United States. From 1925 to 1987, when Van Pelt closed, the Van Pelt Company had built 3,187 fire engines of various types, from small squads or Type 6, as we call them today, aerial ladders, pumpers, platforms. Of that 3,187, 73 were in the Marin County, and that's just a little over 2%. So it tells you that Marin County Fire Chief had a great deal of trust in Van Pelt. The quality of their product was high, and I think the Marin County Fire Service did well going to Van Pelt.
Mm-hmm. They did, and they had like you mentioned, Bob, they had a shop in Oakdale, California, and I didn't know where Oakdale was until I was working for Kenfield, and Chief Camp and Bob Mariani and Bob Betancourt said, let's get in the car. We're going to go take a ride to Oakdale. And here's a shot of what the shop floor looked like. And there's one of their fabricators there putting together looks like he's putting together some cabinets there. And I felt it was a great opportunity for fire folks to be able to go to Van Pelt, spec an apparatus to meet their needs, and then stay up on the process as the assembly went through. We were able to go down there and take a look at the progress and the design of the apparatus. Dan, can you please bring up the next slide? And there's a picture of retired, now deceased, great guy, Frank Berthenier, who was a fire apparatus engineer. And here he is inspecting the apparatus after it had got pulled off the floor. You can see the cab's done, but they haven't done the compartment work and the pump installation yet. But we were honored to be able to go down there and learn so much about how our fire apparatus were being built.
Van Pelt was a very good company who cared deeply about what they were doing, but also had commitment to the local fire departments that their product would better the community fire protection. I don't think you see that much from American LaFrance or Seagrave, who wanted to sell you a fire engine, and that was it. Van Pelt cared about you, developed a relationship with you, and knew that that relationship would carry on in the community.
Sure. And like you mentioned, there are a number of apparatus builders, but Van Pelt was one of those folks that really took care of their fire agency's specifications, and they gave recommendations to the fire department. And the other thing they did is, besides building a top quality piece, is they stood behind their work too. There's a shot up now of the 1937 Fairfax engine. That was the earliest one we were able to find. There may have been some earlier Van Pelt rigs in the county, but that's a great example of, one of their early products.
Well, not only did Fairfax buy a Van Pelt 37, Sausalito did in 42, Ross did in 47, and in your own department, Kenfield did one in 1955. So
that's right.
So it was, Marin County was on board with Van Pelt equipment.
And you mentioned Ross. There's a couple of pieces that Ross bought, the 47 Van Pelt built on the white chassis, and then the 62 Van Pelt on that international chassis. And something maybe we can talk about is everything we've seen so far today has been open cab. I believe the first picture we saw this morning was a open cab Type 1 engine that Santa Fe had. And Bob, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think if you look at Van Pelt, most of the equipment he built up until about 1960 were commercial chassis from Diamond T, White, the Peterbilt. In 1937, Van Pelt hired a guy by the name of Chappell. He hired him as a janitor, and he found out very quickly that this individual was an excellent mechanic. He then advanced him to delivering the equipment, and eventually became a vice president. At the same time, Miracle of France and the Crown in Southern California were going with cab forwards. And Chappell knew that Van Pelt, to survive, had to go there. So he designed the first cab forward. Van Pelt bought a Diamond T chassis and built their engine on top of that. The first one went to Mountain View for $25,000. The second one went to Santa Fe for $36,000. So that was the beginning of getting away from commercial chassis to a large degree and going with custom cab forward engines to complement their product and to be in competition with others who were doing the same thing.
Sure. And back in those days, most of or all of the apparatus, commercial and custom, earlier, they were all gasoline engines. They all had manual transmissions, no power brakes, no air brakes. And we've come a long ways. And you mentioned before they built custom stuff, they built commercial things. And early in our discussion, you mentioned that Van Pelt had done a series of, brush vegetation fire rigs. And so they were very attuned, I think, to the needs of the fire department and what this fire department needed to serve their communities. And I think they tried to elevate their product to meet the needs of the agencies.
Well, in the customs that they built from 1961 on were big Holscott engines, 300 horsepower, 935 cubic inches. I mean, they were brutes, big gas engines. After that became diesels, but the first engines were Holscotts. And when you drove one of those engines, you knew you had a brute. And you had air brakes, as you said. The first engines that came out from Van Pelt to cab forwards also had jump seats.
Mhm.
And I know the one that Santa Fe had jump seats, but the choice was still ride the tailboard. And
Yeah.
so, and nobody said ride the jump seats. So the jump seats were used for carrying extra hose and what have you. So it wasn't until later that we got off the tailboard and then the jump seats.
Yeah. And Van Pelt was, they were successful with that, and we take a look at Tiburon's rig here. It doesn't look like they had either the jump seat or a tailboard. It was probably like a two-person squad. And Van Pelt spread their wings a little bit because about early 1960s, they secured a contract with the state of California to provide Office of Emergency Services rigs. And California had, prior to the California Office of Emergency Services, they had the Civil Defense or Civil Defense Department rigs that the state would place throughout the different regions of the state. And here's an example here, a Van Pelt, I think they had 110 Cal OES rigs that they built for the governor's office. There again, early V8 gasoline engines. Some had stick shifts and some had Allison transmissions as they progress and as the international cabs changed, you were able to get them with the Allison transmission. So, they were very successful with the smaller departments, and obviously building a contract for the state of California was admirable.
But they did a great job in their the 1961 custom Van Pelt that came to Santa Fe had stick shift, had a Hale midship pump, which was new, had 500-gallon water tank, had a hose 800,000 feet of 2.5 and 1.5 inches, and didn't have a lot of compartments though. Had a wheels up on the top.
Mhm.
Had what we called a deluge set, which today I haven't seen any, but it would be up on the top, and then you could take it off and move it to a location where you wanted to suppress the fire with large volumes of water. So they were thinking, and they provided, I think, a product that the fire departments needed.
Sure. And here we are. I think you mentioned there were 72.
Yeah,
rigs,
73.
73 rigs in agencies through Marin, and that did not include the Office of Emergency Services rigs that several agencies had. So, successful. Personally, I hated to see them go. They were absorbed by FMC in the mid 80s. And closed the doors, as you mentioned before. I think it was 87.
Yes.
But it was a fine piece of apparatus, well used in Marin County. And there again, I'd like to thank Chief Bob Marcucci for joining us today. And I'd like to thank the folks that provided some of the pictures we used today. And, hats off to Marin Fire History and our sponsors, the Marin County Fire Chiefs, for enjoying this show together. Thank you.